So instead of spending time creating new content for the YouTube channel these past few weeks, I know it's been some time, don't worry, there's more videos on the way. You know, I'm kind of doing this video, so that counts. But I've actually really been getting back into 3D modeling lately. It's kind of one of those things I was doing last year where I would post a render every single Friday, and I did this for almost 30 straight weeks. Needless to say, I really enjoyed doing it, and I kind of wanted to get back to doing it. So then I joined this Discord channel that is composed of all these 3D artists that love doing the same thing. Anyway, every week there's this weekly challenge posted on the Discord channel, and all the artists need to create a render based on a subject for that week. I personally didn't think I was going to do a render this week because, you know, YouTube and but I thought this would be a fun video to do in the meantime. According to this, I have about 24 hours to create a render. I guess I'm not sleeping tonight. So the subject for this week's challenge is speed. And yes, there is a Keanu joke in there somewhere. So I started out by drawing up my idea. I kind of suck at drawing, but compared to one of my other videos, this is kind of a masterpiece. Next, I started gathering a couple reference images that I could use for modeling purposes. Yep, those are vases, and those are bullets. Then it was time to boot up Cinema 4D so I could get started on creating my scene. I had already come to the conclusion at this point that this was probably gonna be by far the easiest part. Spoilers, shit only goes south from here. At about 2 hours in, I had already had my main subjects in order, and at this point I realized that I haven't been wearing my blue light glasses this entire time. So I went ahead and put those on because I don't want to become a poor man's version of Daredevil by the end of this. After dealing with some existential dread, I rearranged my assets so I could get them in their final position for tonight's festivities. I also decided this would be a good time to drop in an Octane camera and build out the rest of my shot. From there, I was able to start lighting my scene. Yeah, motivational lighting is pretty dope. I'm pretty sure I've been procrastinating maybe a little too much on this. Nah, we're doing good on time, said the person who's totally gonna regret this later. Anyway, this is when I started collecting all my textures and began to apply those to the objects in my scene. Another hour later, and it looked like the scene was in a good spot for me to take a break and make dinner. After dinner, I got right into animating my bullet and setting up the fractures for the first vase. Once that was in a good spot, I thought it would finally be time to start running some simulations. This is where all the fun began. I ran a simulation, modified some settings, ran another simulation, adjusted the material on my vase, and then, you guessed it, ran another simulation. I did this probably about 800 times until I kind of got some good results. Yeah, this was going to have to do for now. Next, I went ahead and added a color to the background, which I ended up getting rid of anyway, and spent some time messing with my materials a little bit. At this point, some of the textures weren't really working for me, so I ended up finding some different ones to use in place of the ones that probably got picked last in gym class.
So it is currently 10:15, something like that, and I have about 14 hours left to go, so that's fun. Each one of my frames is currently going to take about 90 seconds to export. I guess we'll kind of see what will happen. But yeah, a little less than 14 hours left, and I'm getting pretty tired.
Right, so the shot was going to take some time to render. I wasn't too concerned about that though, since I still had plenty of time left. The next thing I did was adjust the materials on my vases once again, and then transferred over the fracture settings from my first vase to the other two, because, you know, those kinda have to shatter too. At this point, I started messing around with another camera angle, but then I sadly came to terms with the fact that I might only have time to render one shot. So I gave up on that pipe dream and decided to just stick with my wide shot. The next thing I had to do was get my fracture simulation to a place that made it seem like I knew what I was doing. So I ran some simulations, adjusted the settings, ran some more simulations, and then baked them, ran even more simulations, and then baked them too. Once I reached the 11-hour mark, I realized that I haven't done any sort of test render yet to see what my shot would end up looking like. I of course just shrugged that off like a big dum-dum because I was now starting to see issues with my fracture collisions. The problem was, when my faces shattered, those pieces would end up triggering the dynamics before the bullet even reached them. Yeah, this was kind of a problem. I tried messing with some of the dynamic settings, and that didn't work. I tried doing some research on the issue, and that didn't work either. Needless to say, after spending about an hour dealing with this problem, I just ended up keyframing my dynamics tags so they would only enable when the bullet was about to hit each vase. This might have been what I should have done to begin with, but I digress. After solving that issue, I decided to fiddle around with my dynamics settings some more until I got everything in a good place. Now I can finally bake this shit and add some moody looking fog. By this point, I had reached the 9-hour mark, and it was probably time to finally do a test render. So I went ahead and started rendering out a test shot so I could make a quick 7-Eleven run for some extra caffeine. And then I got home and I wanted to annihilate my keyboard. So now there was, yet again, another issue I had to deal with. Even though my vases were shown to be completely shattered in the test frame I rendered, that was not the case for the test render that I did. For some reason, certain parts of my vases weren't actually shattering and instead were sitting in place just to spite me. After doing some more research, I figured out that I had to make my fractured vases editable and rebake the simulations so everything showed up in the final render properly. Was this a pain in the ass? Yes, it was. Then I did another test render to see if what I did actually worked. Hey, look at that. It's like it's doing what it should have done like 2 hours ago. Awesome.
It's 6 o'clock in the morning. If you can't tell by my voice, a little tired. But something is actually rendering. And we have about 6 hours left. So this render is probably going to take 3 hours. Who knows? I'm going to get a couple hours of sleep before I have to comp everything and export a video. And you know what? You already know. I've been up for a really long time. I'm gonna go take a nap. Alright, now since I'm done sleeping until eternity, let's check to see how the render did. Okay, so it took a few hours, let's put it that way. But all 120 frames are rendered, which is great.
Now it was about 10 o'clock in the morning, which gave me a little less than 2 hours to post my submission. So I brought my render into After Effects and got to work on making it look pretty. I added some subtle grain, did some time remapping and scale keyframes, and of course added some color correction and a little bit of a tilt shift blur. Then I rendered out my shot so I could bring it over to Premiere for some last minute sound design. At this point, it was slowly creeping up on the 12 o'clock deadline, so I decided it was finally time to export out my shot from Premiere. I quickly hopped over to Discord, posted my submission and proof with 26 minutes to spare. Yeah, I definitely procrastinated way too much on this.
So it's been a few days and I think my sleep schedule is finally back to normal. Well, as normal as it could ever be. And I thought since I'm finally able to function again, I would go ahead and give my takeaways of this whole experience to kind of close out the video. Personally, this was kind of a challenging process for me. Not only was I attempting to do something that I have basically no experience with, but at the same time, the more I learned, the less time I actually had to render out the final shot. I also haven't done any sort of full 3D animation in over a year, and honestly, all that was a simple hot dog animation. So needless to say, this was more complex than anything I've done before. I do think my biggest takeaway from this whole experience is that it does take a really long time to render out a high quality animation. This was kind of an issue because I was running low on time at one point, and 3 hours worth of rendering only gave me a 608p video, which had some pretty unsatisfying results. So anyway, after everything was said and done, I decided to take the weekend to learn more about how to optimize my renders so they look better, but don't take a century to export. After about 12 hours of rendering, I finally ended up with a full HD shot that still kind of looked a little bit janky, but overall looked much better than my original. So without further ado, here's the final shot. So yeah, it's only a 5-second clip, but I think personally this was a good learning experience for me. And that's what matters the most, right? Anyway, if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and do all those things that comes with the YouTube landscape. And if you want to see me do more videos like this, don't forget to leave a comment below. But seriously, I'm not going to be doing a 24-hour render anytime soon. Please don't make me do it.